Imagine like actually increasing your physical muscle mass by 13.5%.
Yeah.
And you never even step foot in a gym. You don't touch a single dumbbell.
Right. Or, consider completely neutralizing a severe life-threatening food allergy, like going from daily anaphylactic shock to just total freedom and doing it in just 3 days.
Yeah, or, and I think this is probably my absolute favorite, literally drawing a single letter on a coffee shop napkin and then somehow manifesting a face-to-face meeting with Elon Musk in a random elevator halfway across the world just a few weeks later.
I mean, I know those scenarios sound like pure science fiction or perhaps just wildly exaggerated anecdotes, but the fascinating reality is that they are empirical, documented facts.
Oh, absolutely.
And they are just the natural byproduct of individuals learning how to, operate the machinery of their own biology.
Okay.
Tapping into the actual mechanics of the quantum field.
Which is exactly why we are here today.
Yeah.
We are undertaking a massive mission for this deep dive. We are jumping into the comprehensive audio recordings of Dr. Joe Dispenza's 2025 Barcelona Progressive Retreat.
It is a staggering amount of information.
It really is. I mean, we have 20 distinct, incredibly dense parts of scientific source material. We're talking about hours and hours of lectures spanning everything from quantum physics to epigenetics to neuroendocrinology.
Which, yeah, that is a heavy lineup of terminology for anyone. Neuroendocrinology, for instance, is just the study of how your brain and your hormones interact. How a single thought can trigger a physical hormonal cascade right into your bloodstream.
Right.
We also see a really deep focus on psychoneuroimmunology throughout these 20 sessions.
Psychoneuroimmunology, that is a mouthful.
It really is, yeah. But it's literally just the science of how your mind, your nervous system, and your immune system are all in constant communication.
So it's a phenomenal amount of dense material. And, traversing 20 extensive sessions of that level of science can feel completely overwhelming for anybody.
Oh, without a doubt.
So our overarching mission today is to act as your ultimate prologue. If you're listening to this, we are decoding, synthesizing, and unpacking the core journey of these 20 sessions.
Right, so that you have a simple, fluent, and highly accessible roadmap.
Exactly. We want to execute this deep dive in a really simple and fluent way so you get a much better understanding of what's actually happening in these teachings. And we're going to use some clear, really powerful questions to guide us through what we're learning.
Because the overarching goal of the entire 2025 retreat, and honestly our goal for this deep dive too, is to transition you through 3 distinct phases.
Okay, we'll see them.
First, you start as a philosopher.
Yeah.
That's someone who intellectually understands these concepts. You've read the books, you get the theory.
But knowledge isn't enough, is it?
No, exactly. Because the second phase is becoming an initiate. That's where you actually apply the knowledge and turn it into a physical, visceral experience.
Right, getting it into the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the final phase is becoming a master. That's where you've done it so many times that it just becomes your state of being. It becomes wisdom.
Which makes sense. I mean, science has effectively become the contemporary language of mysticism.
It really has. When we rely on the objective language of science to explain human transformation, we sort of bypass dogma. We bypass religion entirely.
Yeah, it creates a common, unifying language that an entire community can use to heal and create, regardless of their background.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this framework, because to get from philosopher to master, we really have to start by looking in the mirror.
It's the hardest step.
It is. And the sources present a key question to the listener that I think sets the foundation for this entire journey. And it's a very confronting premise.
Go for it.
If 90% of your thoughts today are the exact same as your thoughts from yesterday, how could your future be anything other than a complete, absolute repeat of your past?
Man, that question just cuts right to the core of human behavior.
It really does. It kind of hurts a little.
It should, because it brings us into the science of what the retreat calls the trapped self. By the time an average person reaches midlife, usually around 35 years old, neuroscience actually shows that 95% of their personality is essentially a subconscious set of automated programs.
Wait, 95%.
95%.
That implies only 5% of our day is actually governed by our conscious free will. Like the rest of the time, we're essentially walking around asleep, just playing out a script we didn't even realize we wrote.
That's precisely what's happening. The biological loop that creates this prison of the quote-unquote known self is incredibly predictable once you understand the mechanics of it.
How so? Like, what does the loop actually look like?
It operates just like a closed-circuit feedback loop. So you think the same thoughts, And because your brain is firing the exact same neural pathways every day, those thoughts lead you to make the exact same choices.
Okay. Same thoughts, same choices.
Right. And those identical choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the exact same experiences in your environment. And those experiences produce the very same emotional chemical signatures in your body.
Oh, wow. And then I'm guessing those familiar emotions drive your very same thoughts again.
Exactly. You are caught in a cycle where your personality is entirely responsible for creating your personal reality.
Okay, if I map that onto like a standard morning routine, the trap becomes glaringly obvious.
Let's hear it.
So I wake up and the very first thing I do, honestly, before my feet even hit the floor, is reach for my smartphone.
Typical, yeah, we all do it.
Right? I open WhatsApp, I scroll through Instagram, I read the news headlines, and in doing that, I am instantly reminded of all my problems. I see an email from that annoying coworker, or I check my bank account, or I remember like a political argument I had online a week ago.
And your body reacts.
Yeah. I am essentially booting up yesterday's operating system the moment I open my eyes.
That analogy perfectly mirrors the biological reality. Your brain is, by definition, an artifact. It is a biological record of everything you have learned and experienced up to this exact moment.
So it's literally just living in the past.
Completely. Every problem you have is an emotional memory etched right into your neural architecture. And it's inextricably linked to specific people, specific objects, times, places.
So the moment I wake up and let my environment trigger those memories, I'm just time traveling backward.
Yes. Your attention is no longer in the present moment. It is anchored to a previous timeline.
And pushing back against that feels nearly impossible. Like, if 95% of my entire being is this deeply entrenched subconscious program deciding to just, be different, feels like standing on train tracks trying to stop a moving freight train by putting my hand out.
It feels impossible because the resistance you feel is entirely physical. Over decades of running this loop, your body has literally been conditioned to become the mind.
What do you mean by that? The body becomes the mind.
Well, your physical body is incredibly objective. It cannot distinguish between a real external experience that creates an emotion and an emotion you are fabricating purely through thought.
Wait, really? The body doesn't know the difference?
Not at all.
Yeah.
When you sit in traffic and say, you remember a bitter argument you had from 3 years ago, your body genuinely believes it is back in that room having that argument right in that very moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it signals the exact same chemistry into your bloodstream. And actually, the most confronting piece of data shared in the retreat regarding this loop involves our memories of trauma.
Okay, I'm bracing myself. What is it?
Neurological studies indicate that 50% of the stories we tell ourselves about our past traumas are entirely made up.
Wait, I need to pause on that because that is a staggering claim.
Oh.
Half of the traumatic memories that we cling to that shape our whole identities are just fabricated.
I mean, the core event happened, yes. The initial trauma was real, but the brain embellishes, distorts, and fabricates 50% of the surrounding details.
Why would it do that?
We unconsciously make the stories worse than they actually were. We amplify the villainy of the other person, and we exaggerate our own victimization. And the mechanism behind this is rooted in our chemical addictions.
Chemical addictions, like we're addicted to feeling bad.
Exactly. We literally manipulate our own memories just to excuse ourselves from the hard work of changing. We use the pain of our past to justify why we cannot possibly be happy in the present.
Oh my gosh. That is so dark, but it makes so much sense.
So,
We gathered with friends to complain, right? Using each other to reaffirm this addiction to victimization.
yes, and society has normalized this behavior completely. It's just what people do over coffee.
We are actively decorating our own prison cells to avoid the terrifying prospect of stepping outside. We cling to the familiar past because even if it's a miserable place to live, it is at least predictable.
Predictability feels safe to the human brain.
But if we are biologically stuck in this familiar past, what is the actual chemical glue holding that addiction together? Like what locks the door?
The lock on the door is the human body's ultimate survival mechanism, which is stress.
Which transitions us perfectly from the philosophy of our habits right into the raw neuroscience of survival.
Exactly.
Because Dr. Joe tells a phenomenal story in the retreat to illustrate how this survival mechanism hijacks our biology.
Oh, the cougar story. It's so good.
It is. So for you listening, he used to live on this isolated ranch out in the country, surrounded by miles of dark woods. And one night, he parks his car after a long trip. He has his dry cleaning slung over one shoulder, a heavy computer bag in his hand.
Just a normal, everyday scenario.
Right. and he's walking up this ancient, uneven stone pathway toward his house in pitch darkness. And suddenly, he hears this distinct rustling sound behind a large rock just a few feet away.
And in a fraction of a second, entirely based on new sensory information from his environment, his internal state undergoes a massive physiological shift.
Huge shift. He pulls out his phone, turns on the flashlight app, and points it at the rock. And staring back at him is a massive mother cougar with her cub.
Which is terrifying.
Right. The cougar crouches down and emits this low, guttural hiss that essentially translates to, "Do not take one more step."
Yeah, she meant business.
Now, in that specific moment, Dr. Joe's body channels every single ounce of its available energy toward one single goal, which is survival. As he notes in the lecture, this is absolutely not the time to sit still.
No, definitely not.
It's not the time to open your heart to the universe, or close your eyes and practice a walking meditation, or be emotionally vulnerable. The only biological imperatives available are to run, fight, or hide.
What you are describing is the extreme activation of the sympathetic nervous system. It's commonly known as the fight-or-flight response.
Right.
When you perceive a threat in your outer world, a sudden unknown, your body taps into its vital reserves and mobilizes an enormous amount of chemical energy.
So what's actually happening in the blood?
Well, adrenaline and cortisol flood the system. Your pupils dilate to let in more light. Blood is literally shunted away from your digestive organs and your immune system, and it routes directly to your extremities so you can flee.
That is wild. Your body just shuts down digestion because you don't need to digest a sandwich if you're about to become lunch.
Exactly. You don't need a strong immune system to fight a cold tomorrow if you're not going to survive the next 10 seconds. Furthermore, your psychological focus narrows completely on the cause of the danger.
The threat becomes the only thing that matters.
Right. Your entire conscious attention is instantly consumed by three things: your physical body, your immediate environment, and time. Your brain is rapidly calculating, how fast can I move this body through this space to reach safety before my time runs out?
That biological cascade is brilliantly designed and entirely necessary if you're actually facing a mother cougar in the dark.
Right. It keeps you alive.
But the problem we face in modern society is that we are triggering this exact same massive systemic biological alarm when we are simply like sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic, or when we receive an ambiguous text message from a partner, or when we watch a stressful news report.
The contrast between humans and animals in this regard is really telling.
How so?
Well, if a zebra is chased by a lion and manages to outrun it, within minutes the zebra's nervous system resets. It goes right back to grazing peacefully. The threat is gone, so the internal chemical environment returns to homeostasis.
It just shakes it off.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
Humans, however, possess a neocortex that allows us to turn on the stress response by thought alone.
So we can just sit there and worry ourselves into a panic.
Exactly. We can sit in a perfectly safe living room, anticipate a future worst-case scenario regarding our finances, and flood our bodies with the exact same toxic survival chemistry as if a predator were in the room.
That is exhausting just to think about.
It is. If you turn on that stress response and never turn it off, you are headed for disease. And worse, we become deeply addicted to that rush of arousal. We become dependent on the hormones of stress just to feel alive.
So if I am chronically stressed about a work presentation or a strained relationship, what is physically happening inside my brain? Like, how does that chemical cocktail affect my cognitive function?
The retreat uses a brilliant visual for this state. They call it a lightning storm in the clouds.
A lightning storm in the clouds. I like that.
Yeah. When you live in chronic stress, your brain shifts into a state of high beta brainwaves. Because you feel threatened, your brain's primary objective is to predict and control every possible outcome to ensure survival.
So you're just constantly scanning for problems.
Right. To do this, you shift your attention rapidly from one problem to the next. You think about your angry boss, then you worry about your dwindling bank account, then you stress over a fight with your spouse, then you focus on the physical pain in your lower back.
I feel attacked. That sounds like my Tuesday.
We all do it. But here's the science. Every single one of those elements is mapped to a different neurological network in your brain. As you rapidly bounce your attention between them, these distinct compartments of the brain begin to fire out of order. They fall completely out of rhythm.
So the synchronization just breaks down. It becomes a cacophony instead of a symphony.
Total neurological incoherence. The brain waves actually start to cancel each other out. The overall energy in the brain drops, and it becomes a house divided against itself.
Wow.
You are effectively driving a high-performance sports car on the freeway in first gear, just endlessly redlining the engine until it burns out.
And there is a speculation made during the retreat that absolutely floored me when I was reviewing the sources. It states that when we try to analyze our lives or figure out solutions to our problems from within this high-stress, high-beta emotional state, we will actually make our brains worse 100% of the time.
100% of the time, yes.
That's crazy.
The mechanics of why that happens are deeply rooted in our neurochemistry. You fundamentally cannot solve a problem with the same emotion that created it.
Wait, say that again?
You cannot solve a problem with the same emotion that created it. When you attempt to analyze your life from a state of fear, frustration, or resentment, every thought you have is filtered through that emotional lens.
Okay, that tracks.
Because thoughts produce chemicals, analyzing your fear simply produces more of the chemicals of fear. This toxic feedback loop drives the brain even further into the chaotic state of high beta. The arousal climbs higher, the incoherence deepens, and you are literally carving the rut of your problems deeper into your neural architecture.
So we cannot think our way out of the box while we are using the tools inside the box.
Exactly.
To escape this high-stress convergent focus, where we are obsessively fixated on matter, time, and our physical bodies, we have to do the exact opposite. We have to shift to a divergent focus. We have to step entirely outside of the known material world and enter the quantum field.
To truly grasp the magnitude of this shift, we have to look at the physics models discussed in the sessions.
Yeah, let's talk physics.
Yeah.
Because this part is wild.
Okay, so classical Newtonian physics, the model most of us grew up learning, taught us that reality is entirely predictable. If you drop an apple from a tree, you can calculate its exact mass, its speed, its trajectory, and the precise moment it will hit the ground.
Right. It's a reality based purely on matter interacting with matter.
But when quantum physicists like Albert Einstein and Max Planck began studying the subatomic world, the building blocks of that apple, they realized that classical rules completely break down.
Electrons do not behave like apples. They don't move in a linear, predictable fashion at all.
No, they exhibit what is known as quantum behavior. Electrons don't smoothly orbit the nucleus of an atom, they jump. They vanish from one energy field and instantly reappear in another, a phenomenon known as the quantum leap.
It's basically teleportation.
Pretty much. Furthermore, quantum mechanics reveals that the atom is 99.99999% empty space. It is almost entirely devoid of solid matter.
That is so hard to wrap my head around. Like, the chair I'm sitting in is mostly empty space.
Yes. What we perceive as empty space is actually a dense field of energy, frequency, and information. Matter is just the absolute tiniest fraction of reality, an illusion created by the frequency of that energy.
So reality is mostly an invisible field of energy. And the meditation practices detailed in this retreat are specifically engineered to get our consciousness into that field.
Yes.
The how-to of this process is incredibly specific. The primary goal is to take your attention completely off your outer world. You have to take off the virtual reality headset of the three-dimensional environment.
I love that metaphor, the VR headset.
It works perfectly. The instruction in the sessions is to become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and in no time.
It requires a systematic dismantling of your identity.
Break that down for us. What does it mean to become nobody?
To become nobody, you must withdraw your attention from your physical form. You stop thinking about your face, your weight, the pain in your knee, your gender, your biological age.
Okay, and no one.
To become no one, you have to shed the roles you play. You are no longer a mother, a CEO, an employee, or a friend.
You just strip off the labels.
Exactly. Becoming no thing means detaching from the material objects that define you. Your smartphone, your car, your mortgage. Nowhere requires forgetting the physical space you occupy, whether it's a chair in your living room or a bed in a hotel.
And the hardest one? No time.
Right. No time is the final frontier. It demands a total disconnection from anticipating the predictable future or remembering the familiar past. You strip everything away until you are pure consciousness.
Okay, I really need to stop you there because this is where my logical brain short circuits. And I know I'm not alone in this.
It's the biggest hurdle for everyone.
If I'm sitting on a meditation cushion, genuinely trying to become pure consciousness and be nobody, but suddenly my nose starts itching violently. Or I remember I forgot to take the garbage out to the curb. Or I start wondering if my boss replied to that critical email. When those thoughts hijack my brain, haven't I failed the meditation? Isn't that the moment most people throw their hands up and say, I'm just bad at this?
That exact moment of frustration is the pivotal crossroads of transformation.
Really?
It is not a failure at all. It is the absolute moment of victory. When you are sitting in the dirt and your body suddenly demands that you scratch an itch or your mind races to the garbage day schedule, your body is throwing a chemical tantrum.
A chemical tantrum. That is the perfect phrase.
It is. It is craving its usual hit of familiar stress hormones. Catching yourself drifting to the known predictable future or the familiar past, becoming aware of that habitual pull, lowering the volume of the associated emotion, and willfully returning your attention back to the present moment, that process is the heavy lifting. That is the actual mechanism of unwiring old neural networks.
So the distraction isn't a sign of failure. The distraction is the resistance training. It's like the dumbbell I use to build a stronger mind.
That's exactly what it is. It is the biological process of taming the animal. Every single time you execute a will that is greater than your automated subconscious program, you are sending a profound signal to your nervous system.
What kind of signal?
You are informing the body that it is no longer running the show as the mind. You are the conscious mind. In neuroscience, there is a principle called Hebb's Law. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together.
Fire together, wire together. I've heard that.
By willfully denying the old thought pattern, the energy of your attention, nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, the neural circuits of your past literally begin to prune apart. You are biologically dismantling your old self.
And as we engage in this process, as we broaden our focus, detach from matter, and settle into that empty space, our brainwaves go through a very measurable, profound journey, don't they?
Oh, the shifting brainwaves is highly documented. As you stop analyzing your problems and start sensing the emptiness of space, the chaotic rhythm of high beta begins to slow down.
So we drop out of beta.
Right, you transition into alpha brainwaves. In the alpha state, the analytical mind, that incessant critical voice narrating your life, shuts off.
Oh, sweet relief.
Exactly. The inner world of your imagination becomes more real than the outer world of your senses. The divided, compartmentalized areas of your brain begin to synchronize. They start communicating again, creating a state known as whole brain coherence.
But the rabbit hole goes deeper than alpha, right?
Way deeper. If you maintain that coherence and continue to relax, your body eventually falls into a state of light sleep, but your mind remains completely awake and lucid. This is the theta brainwave state. Theta is the hypnotic state. It's the twilight zone where the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious operating system swings wide open. You bypass the analytical filters entirely.
And there's one more after theta.
Yes, finally, for some practitioners, as energy rushes into the brain from the body, they experience a massive spike in gamma brainwaves.
Is gamma like passing out?
Not at all. Gamma is not unconsciousness. It is superconsciousness. It is a state of hyper-awareness, often described subjectively as an experience of pure ecstasy, bliss, and profound connection to the entire universe.
If we can reach that deep theta state, where the door to the subconscious operating system is standing wide open, what do we actually type it into the terminal? Like, once we're in, what do we do?
This brings us to the astonishing mechanics of mental rehearsal and biological upgrades.
This is where things get truly wild.
Because when you cross the threshold into theta or gamma, you are no longer subject to the laws of classical physics. You no longer have to move your physical body through three-dimensional space over a long period of time to create a change.
Right.
You are operating purely in the quantum realm of information, frequency, and energy. In this state, your body becomes incredibly suggestible to new information.
To illustrate the sheer power of this suggestibility, the retreat highlights 2 clinical studies that completely rewrite our understanding of human potential. Let's look at the piano study first.
Oh, the piano study is brilliant.
It is. Researchers took a group of individuals who had 0 prior experience playing the piano, never touched one. They split them into 2 distinct groups. Group A was instructed to physically practice playing a specific set of one-handed scales and chords.
Right, sitting at a real piano.
Exactly. They sat at a real piano for 2 hours a day for 5 consecutive days. As you would logically expect from classical mechanics, functional MRI scans show that these individuals grew a completely new set of neural architecture. They physically built the brain hardware necessary to play those chords.
Which perfectly aligns with our standard cause and effect understanding of reality, right? Physical action over time creates a physical change in the brain.
Exactly. But here's where reality bends. Group B never once touched a physical piano.
Not once.
They were instructed to sit in a quiet room, close their eyes, and only imagine practicing those exact same scales and chords. They did this mental rehearsal for the same duration, 2 hours a day, for 5 days.
Just visualizing it.
At the end of the experiment, their brain scans revealed something impossible by classical standards. Group B had grown the exact same new neural architecture as the group who physically practiced. The brain literally did not know the difference between the physical 3D experience and the purely mental rehearsal.
They successfully primed their neurological hardware for a future event. By holding a clear intention and focused attention, the experience appeared to the brain as if it had already happened.
It's like hacking the system.
But the brain's plasticity is just the first layer. The true paradigm shift occurs when we look at how this impacts physical tissue in the body.
Right, because changing neural pathways is one thing, but the second study demonstrates how thought alters muscle fibers. In this study, a group of men were tasked with increasing their bicep strength. However, for 2 straight weeks, they were forbidden from lifting a single weight.
So no gym time at all.
None. Instead, they mentally rehearsed performing heavy bicep curls. They closed their eyes, vividly imagined the physical exertion, and crucially, they added a strong emotional and sensory component.
That's the key.
They imagined the intense feeling of the muscle fibers tearing and working harder, the strain of the weight, the triumph of getting stronger. At the end of those 2 weeks, physical measurements showed these men had achieved a 13.5% increase in actual physical bicep strength. They grew muscle mass solely through thought and feeling.
The mechanism driving that physical growth is the science of epigenetics.
Explain epigenetics for us.
Well, the outdated model of biology taught us that our genetic code was a rigid destiny, that our DNA dictated our health, our traits, and our lifespan, and we had no control over it.
Right. You get what you get.
Exactly. But epigenetics completely dismantled that dogma. It proved that while the genetic blueprint remains the same, the environment signals the gene to turn on or off.
Okay.
Now, we have to ask, what is the end product of an experience in your environment? It is an emotion.
Ah, I see. If you encounter danger, the environmental signal creates the emotion of fear. If you see a loved one, the signal creates the emotion of joy.
Precisely. The emotion is the chemical messenger that travels through the bloodstream, penetrates the cell wall, and instructs the DNA to express a specific protein.
So emotion dictates protein production.
Yes. Therefore, if you can feel the elevated emotion of a future event, whether it is profound gratitude for a bodily healing, the joy of a new career, or the physical intensity of a stronger muscle before the physical event actually occurs in time and space, your body believes it is living in that future reality right now.
We are, at our core, objective protein-producing machines. Muscle cells produce muscle proteins. Immune cells produce immune proteins.
Correct.
If we send the correct chemical signals down to the cellular level, utilizing a coherent thought and an elevated emotion, we possess the biological capability to upregulate genes for health and downregulate genes for disease by thought and feeling alone.
I know it sounds mystical, but it is just the mechanical application of biology. You are consciously overriding the automated chemistry of stress, fear, and survival, and replacing it with the chemistry of healing, growth, and creation.
Building a bicep through mental rehearsal is astonishing. But what happens when we aim this profound biological machinery at terminal illness or severe chronic conditions?
This leads us right into the medical evidence of miracles,
where we move from theory to empirical, documented reality.
The retreat organization didn't just want to collect anecdotal stories. They wanted hard data, so they partnered with independent empirical scientists, including a dedicated research team from the University of California, San Diego, to measure precisely what happens in the blood plasma, the genetic expression, and the brain waves of individuals practicing this work during week-long immersive retreats.
And the data they uncovered is nothing short of revolutionary. Researchers drew blood plasma from advanced meditators within the community. And to be clear, advanced doesn't mean monks who have meditated in a cave for 30 years.
No, not at all.
It refers to regular people who have simply mastered the skill of moving past their analytical mind and reaching that deep state of coherence we discussed.
Everyday people.
Right. So the scientists took this coherent blood plasma and exposed it to in vitro cancer cells in a laboratory. The results were staggering. The plasma effectively shut down 70% of the mitochondrial function within those cancer cells.
7%?
Yes. The mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. The plasma literally suffocated the cancer's energy supply, preventing the cells from multiplying.
The implications of that plasma study extend far beyond oncology, too.
What else did they find?
The researchers discovered that the same coherent blood plasma actively downregulated the specific genetic markers responsible for Alzheimer's disease. Astonishingly, 84% of the community members studied demonstrated this epigenetic effect.
84%, that's a huge majority.
It is. Furthermore, when analyzing immune responses, they found that this plasma neutralized the COVID-19 virus by producing a specific protein that blocked the virus from entering the human cell.
That is incredible.
Across the board, they documented a 50% upregulation in immune system antibodies, the body's primary defense forces, in just 4 days of meditation practice.
A 50% stronger immune system in less than a work week.
By doing nothing but meditating.
And the metric that truly blows my mind involves the measurement of telomeres.
Oh, yes, the biological age marker.
Exactly. Telomeres are essentially like the little plastic caps on the ends of your shoelaces, but for your DNA chromosomes, they dictate your biological age.
Yeah.
Every time a cell divides, the telomere gets slightly shorter.
Which is why we age.
Right. Normally, extending the length of a telomere requires months or even years of a pristine organic diet, intense exercise, and zero stress. Yet the research team measured individuals lengthening their telomeres in a matter of days during the retreat.
In days.
The lead researchers themselves stated that biological processes simply do not move that fast. Extending telomeres in days is not a biological event. It is a literal quantum event.
It is the direct observation of energy and frequency informing matter instantaneously, bypassing the traditional constraints of time.
The anecdotal stories shared from the stage during the retreat perfectly align with this hard data. There's an incredible case study of a man diagnosed with ALS, a devastating, progressive, neurodegenerative disease.
Such a powerful story.
He arrived at the retreat, bound to a wheelchair, his body failing. But during the meditations, he didn't focus his attention on his disease. He didn't meditate on the ALS. Instead, he focused entirely on opening his heart, feeling profound love, and entering the quantum field, knowing that this elevated emotion was signaling new genes.
He changed his energy.
Yes. And by the end of the week-long event, he stood up out of his wheelchair completely unassisted. A few weeks later, he was sending the team videos of himself effortlessly walking up steep flights of stairs alongside his children.
Another deeply compelling case involves a professional psychotherapist who suffered from incredibly severe, life-threatening food allergies.
Well, the allergy case.
Yeah. Her condition was so volatile that she was going into anaphylactic shock 1 to 3 times every single day. Her throat would close, her tongue would swell, her heart rate would spike dangerously.
1 to 3 times a day. How do you even live like that?
She lived on the razor's edge of death on a daily basis. She attended the retreat wearing a heavy-duty respirator mask, isolating herself in a distant balcony away from any potential triggers.
Understandably terrified.
But she dove into the work. And by the 3rd day of the retreat, she was sitting comfortably in the front row, completely unmasked, breathing freely. She was entirely cured. She hasn't experienced a single anaphylactic event since that week.
When I hear stories like that, my immediate question is, what exactly were they doing in their minds? Like, did the woman with the allergies sit there and specifically visualize her immune system calming down? Did the man with ALS visualize his motor neurons reconnecting?
That is a crucial distinction to make. The data and the interviews show that they did not meditate to heal.
They didn't meditate to heal.
No. Meditating with the desperate intention to heal implies that you are broken and need fixing, which keeps you anchored in the emotion of lack. They meditated to change.
To change who they were.
Yes. They reached a profound realization that they could not take their old personality, the personality that created or sustained the disease, into a new future. They had to become someone else entirely.
Wow.
When they fundamentally changed their internal state of being, when they surrendered completely to love, joy, and gratitude instead of fighting their fear and resentment, the healing occurred merely as a biological byproduct. They assigned deep meaning to the act of feeling joy, understanding that the joy itself was the medicine signaling new genetic expression.
But overriding decades of biological programming and generating that level of healing power requires a staggering amount of raw, creative energy.
It takes fuel, yes.
Yeah. If someone is suffering from a chronic illness or just chronic life stress, they usually feel completely drained. They have no surplus energy. Which brings us to a massive revelation in the teachings. We are unwittingly giving all of our vital energy away to the three-dimensional world.
There is a fundamental principle in this work. Where you place your attention is exactly where you place your energy.
Say that one more time.
Where you place your attention is exactly where you place your energy. If your daily attention is violently scattered, obsessing over past traumas, fuming at your enemies, doom scrolling on your cell phone, and worrying about your mounting debts, your creative life force is heavily fractured.
It's just leaking everywhere.
It is bound to the material world, leaving you with no internal surplus to shill your body or design a new life.
Okay, I have to jump in here with a healthy dose of skepticism, because this specific concept always tripped on my logical processing.
Fair enough. Let's hear it.
If I am sitting on my couch and I am absolutely furious at my ex-partner or enraged at a toxic boss, I actually feel incredibly energized. My heart is pounding, my body temperature rises, I feel a surge of power. But the teachings claim I'm actually giving my energy away in that moment. What is the actual physics behind that?
To understand that paradox, we have to look at the physics of how atoms bond together to form molecules.
Okay, chemistry lesson, let's go.
When two individual atoms bond, they must exchange and share energy, specifically electrons. They become bound together by an invisible electromagnetic field. Human relationships operate on the exact same quantum mechanics.
Like actual quantum bonds.
Yes. When you share a highly charged, deep survival emotion with someone like intense hatred, bitter resentment, or even a codependent mutual suffering, you are literally forming a quantum bond with that person. You are exchanging energy through the quantum field.
So when I am sitting alone in my living room, fuming about a disrespectful comment my boss made 3 days ago, I am not just having a private thought. I am actively transmitting my vital, biological life force to my boss through an invisible quantum bond.
That is precisely the mechanism. You are inextricably bound to them by an invisible field of electromagnetic energy that operates entirely outside of space and time. You are effectively acting as a battery, feeding them your creative energy.
Well, that's infuriating. I don't want to be their battery.
Exactly. Now, in chemistry, what does it take to break a molecular bond? It requires an influx of energy, a higher frequency.
Okay.
When you are sitting in a meditation and the intrusive memory of your toxic boss surfaces, accompanied by that familiar addictive rush of anger, your job is to recognize it. You deliberately lower the volume of that specific emotion. You willfully take your attention completely off that person.
You pull the plug on the connection?
You sever the bond. And the moment you break that quantum bond, all of that raw, creative energy that was previously tied up in maintaining your resentment instantly returns to you. You reclaim it.
It just snaps back into your field.
Exactly. As you call this energy back from everyone and everything in your past, you begin to build a massive, coherent electromagnetic field around your own body. This reclaimed energy is the essential raw material you must use to heal your physical form and architect a new future.
Once we pull the plug on the 3D world and draw that vital energy back into our bodies, where does it actually go? Like physically? The retreat focuses heavily on a specific practice called the blessing of the energy centers to manage this newly acquired fuel.
The human body's autonomic nervous system manages our biology through 8 specific energy centers. You can visualize these centers as individual mini-brains located throughout the body.
Mini brains.
Yeah. Each center possesses its own unique frequency, its own specific chemistry, its own corresponding hormones, and its own individual consciousness or mandate.
Walk us through the bottom ones.
Sure. The first center, located at the base of the spine, is entirely associated with procreation, elimination, and base survival. The second center, located behind the navel, governs digestion, consumption, and metabolism. The third center, located in the solar plexus, is associated with personal power, sheer will, control, and frequently, aggression.
When we are living in chronic stress, endlessly reacting to traffic jams and emails, we are essentially living entirely within those bottom 3 survival centers. All of our energy is pooled there.
Exactly. You're just surviving. But as you execute the work, as you reclaim your energy from external attachments and consciously stop firing the toxic chemistry of stress, that raw energy naturally begins to ascend.
It moves up.
It moves up from the survival centers and enters the 4th center, which is the heart. When a significant volume of energy hits the heart center, it triggers a profound biological cascade.
This is where the magic happens.
It really is. The heart releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Oxytocin then signals the release of nitric oxide in the bloodstream. Nitric oxide literally causes your arteries and blood vessels to physically dilate and open up. Your chest expands.
You literally feel your heart opening.
Yes. In that moment, you physically, tangibly feel a rush of profound love, wholeness, and deep gratitude. And from the heart, this coherent energy continues its journey upward, traveling straight into the brain.
Which creates the ultimate state of heart-brain coherence.
That coherence is the biological prerequisite for creation. In this dynamic, the brain acts as the electrical transmitter, sending your clear intention out into the field. The heart acts as the magnetic receiver, drawing the experience back to you. When the heart and brain are in perfect synchronization, you establish a crystal clear, incredibly powerful Wi-Fi signal connecting you directly to the quantum field of infinite possibilities.
And once you have established that clear Wi-Fi signal, once you have successfully reclaimed your vital energy and anchored yourself in the quantum void, you are finally equipped to manifest a totally new reality.
The best part.
Which brings us to the final, most actionable phase of our deep dive, the formula for creation. Or, as it is playfully referred to in the community, the squiggly lines exercise.
This is where the theoretical physics translates into tangible daily application. The foundational rule of this formula is that you fundamentally cannot create a new reality from matter to matter.
Explain that. Matter to matter.
If you desperately want a new career in the three-dimensional world and you rely strictly on 3D rules, it requires an immense expenditure of time and physical energy. You have to endure long commutes, grind through dozens of interviews, painstakingly save money, and try to force outcomes through sheer willpower.
That's exhausting.
You are forced to physically move your dense body through space over a long duration of time to achieve a result.
Creating from the quantum field bypasses that entire exhausting process. The retreat provides a very exact, methodical pen and paper exercise to harness this. Let me walk you through the exact steps.
That's good.
Step 1. You pick a specific potential that you want to experience in your life. It could be landing a dream job, achieving a physical healing, going on a luxurious vacation, or even having a profound mystical experience.
Get clear on what you want.
Right. Step 2. You take a blank piece of paper and write a single, bold capital letter to represent that potential. Let's use J for a new job.
Useful enough.
Step 3. You draw 2 squiggly, circular lines completely surrounding that letter. Those squiggly lines visually represent the invisible electromagnetic field that you are preparing to broadcast out into the quantum void.
Drawing the symbol isn't magic, by the way. It is psychology. The symbol acts as a tangible anchor for your focused attention. It gives your conscious mind a specific target.
Step 4. Directly below the letter, you write out a list of specific intentions. This is the what's of your creation. So for RJ, for Job, your intentions might look like this. A warm geographic location, a role that makes a genuine difference in the world, working alongside brilliant colleagues and making an exceptional salary.
The details.
Yes, the details. And step 5, and this is the absolute linchpin of the entire formula. You list the elevated emotions you will feel when this event finally happens. This is the how it feels column.
Crucial step.
You write down joy, profound gratitude, absolute freedom, deep inspiration. Crucially, you are not writing down the emotions of your past. You aren't writing guilt, fear, desperation, or unworthiness.
The mechanics of why this works are beautiful. As we established, the coherent brain sends out the electrical signal, the clear, specific intention of what you desire, represented by your list of details. But the coherent heart acts as the magnetic receiver. It actually draws the physical event to you.
Intentions send it out, emotions pull it back.
Exactly. You must fully embody and feel the elevated emotion of the event before it happens in physical reality to generate that magnetic pull. When your electrical intention perfectly matches your magnetic emotion, you broadcast a brand new, powerful electromagnetic signature into the quantum field.
And the tangible payoffs from dedicating yourself to this specific formula are nothing short of incredible. Dr. Joe shares 3 deeply illustrative stories during the retreat that prove how this mechanism collapses time and space in ways you could never possibly predict.
The unpredictability is the ultimate hallmark of a quantum creation. If you can logically predict exactly how, when, and where your intention will manifest, you are not creating from the quantum field. You are simply projecting your known past into the future. The field delivers the outcome in a way that surprises you.
So let's talk about the first story. It involves a German engineer working for Porsche.
Ah, the elevator story.
Yes. He wants a massive life change, so he utilizes the formula. He writes down a bold J on a napkin for a new job. His specific intentions are to work for Tesla, to significantly increase his salary, to live somewhere warm and sunny, and to engage in work that makes a real difference.
Very specific.
His elevated emotions are joy, immense gratitude, and feeling deeply inspired by life. He commits to the practice. Every day, he enters the quantum void, finds his J, and tunes into those emotions. Months pass. Absolutely nothing happens in his 3D reality.
Keeping it all.
No recruiter calls. But he doesn't quit. He trusts the field. Then he happens to be attending an event at a hotel in Hamburg, Germany. She steps into a completely empty elevator. The doors are about to close when a man steps in.
And who is it?
It's Elon Musk. The engineer introduces himself, pitches his vision, and by the time that elevator reaches the ground floor, he is hired.
That is wild.
He moves to sunny California, receives a massive promotion, and eventually even gets the surreal opportunity to test drive Elon's personal prototype vehicle in Amsterdam.
He bypassed the entire 3D process of job hunting. He didn't have to network, send a resume, or grind through HR interviews. He collapsed time and space. The experience was magnetically drawn to him because his internal state of being perfectly matched the frequency of that specific future.
The second story is a personal one from Dr. Joe himself, known as the wine tour synchronicity.
I love this one.
He was on a flight and happened to strike up a conversation with a woman sitting next to him. It turns out her family owns a prestigious 17th century award-winning vineyard in Italy. They have a fantastic conversation. She extends a warm invitation to visit and hands him her business card.
Nice.
But amid the chaos of travel, he loses the card. Now, instead of falling into the trap of the old self, playing the victim, stressing out, or trying to frantically track her down online, he decides to surrender to the formula.
A true test.
He takes a piece of paper and writes a C for the card and the wine experience. His intentions: eat phenomenal authentic food, meet an expert in the field, and experience deep Italian culture. His elevated emotions: joy, absolute freedom, and a profound love for life. He makes it a habit to practice feeling this precise reality on every flight he takes, putting his blindfold on and just tuning into the frequency of the sea.
And again, an enormous amount of time passes. Months go by with zero evidence that the universe is responding.
Exactly. Until a year later, he is hosting a massive, sold-out progressive retreat at a large hotel in Lake Garda, Italy. Hundreds of people are everywhere. He finishes a session, walks through the crowded lobby of the hotel, and literally physically bumps into a woman.
No way.
It is the exact same woman from the airplane. It turns out her family had booked that specific hotel for an annual wine festival a full year in advance. Out of the hundreds of people milling around the lobby, she was the only person in the entire building who was not attending his event.
The only one.
He didn't have to find her. He drew the exact, highly specific experience right to his physical location.
The sheer mathematical improbability of that synchronicity leaves you with absolutely no doubt that you are the conscious creator of your life. It just shatters the illusion of victimhood.
The final story perfectly illustrates the speed of the quantum field. An overworked, highly stressed man living in Drury, London, decides he desperately needs a break. He writes a V for vacation.
A class.
His intentions? Exactly 10 days, a warm tropical place, completely free of charge and surrounded by cool, creative people. His emotions: deep peace, joy, and the exhalation of freedom. He drops into a deep meditation in his apartment, completely losing himself in the void, and vividly visualizes the sensory experience of his bare feet sinking into hot sand. He achieves a massive emotional peak.
He locked it in.
Immediately after concluding the meditation, he leaves his apartment and starts walking down a busy street in Belgravia. His cell phone rings. It's a close friend who is practically shouting. The friend had just unexpectedly won an all-expenses-paid trip for 4 people to Malaga, Spain.
That fast.
Literally right after the meditation. The group going includes a talented musician and a playwright. The friend asks, "Do you want the 4th ticket? It's completely free." The only minor deviation was that the trip was for 9 days instead of 10. But it materialized out of thin air, in 0 time, perfectly matching his intentions and emotions.
When you stop trying to force matter to change matter and you learn to create from the field, the manifestation happens in a way that profoundly surprises you. It leaves you in a state of absolute awe. That awe reinforces your belief in the invisible field, making you fall deeply in love with the unknown rather than fearing it.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this epic deep dive. Let's recap the profound journey we've taken through these 20 parts.
Let's do it.
We begin by looking in the mirror and recognizing that we are biologically trapped in the automated loop of the familiar past. To break out of that prison, we have to brave the severe discomfort of the unknown.
We have to step out.
We have to stop giving our vital power away to our past traumas, our toxic relationships, and our addiction to stress. We willfully lower the volume on our survival emotions, pull our creative energy back into our own field, and guide it up to the heart to achieve profound heart-brain coherence.
Finding that coherence.
We take off the VR headset of the 3D world, becoming nobody, no one, nowhere, and in no time, fully stepping into the infinite quantum void. And finally, armed with a clear electrical intention and a deeply felt magnetic emotion, we draw our brand new, healed, abundant future to us like a magnet.
It is nothing less than the complete biological and neurological death of the old self, and a literal rebirth into a conscious, empowered creator.
I want to leave you with one final incredibly provocative thought from the retreat. During one of the deep philosophical sessions, Dr. Joe looks out at the audience and says, "You are a fish in water asking for a drink."
Oh, that's beautiful.
I want you to really let that sink in. The quantum field of infinite possibility, the source of all healing and creation, isn't some distant galaxy you have to travel light years to reach. It isn't hidden away on a mountaintop. It is everywhere.
It is right here.
It is all around you, right now, in this very second, moving through you and responding to you. You just have to drop the heavy illusion of the physical you to finally see it.
The water is everywhere. You just have to wake up and realize you are already swimming in it.
If you found this deep dive valuable, and we hope executing this in a simple, fluid way helps you understand the massive scope of this retreat, please subscribe to our channel so you can join our live sessions on time. We are always waiting for your comments and questions, so let us know what you want us to unpack next.